Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we're pulling from some really fascinating clinical insights provided by the Berkeley Center. We're going to explore this intersection, which is pretty wild, honestly, between centuries-old Eastern acupuncture and hypermodern male fertility treatments.
Yeah, it's a huge contrast, but a really important one.
Right, because there's this very specific moment in the world of medicine that I think feels almost universally cold. You're sitting in a sterile, brightly lit clinic, and someone hands you a piece of paper. It's a printout, a semen analysis.
Exactly, and it's terrifying.
It really is. And suddenly, what is arguably the most deeply personal, emotional, and human experience trying to create a family is just reduced to a spreadsheet of clinical terms. So the mission of this deep dive is to demystify those intimidating numbers and explore exactly how targeted, non-surgical approaches actually fit into that whole journey.
It's so needed.
Yeah.
Because you walk in as a person or a partner,
Yeah.
and you walk out as, well, a collection of percentages and concentrations. It feels like you're being graded on your biology.
Yeah, like you failed a test you didn't even know you were taking.
Exactly. And the numbers are delivered as if they're absolute, unchangeable facts. But the biological reality happening in the background is immensely dynamic. So we're going to synthesize the raw biology of sperm production with the very practical timeline of fertility care.
Which is so crucial for people going through this.
It really is. Because when you understand the physiological mechanics of how treatments like acupuncture actually work alongside conventional medicine, that sterile printout becomes a tool rather than a judgment.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can talk about fixing something like low sperm motility, we have to actually understand what the clinic is measuring in the first place. That printout is essentially a completely different language for most people.
Oh, entirely. It's a foreign language.
Right. So let's start with motility itself, because the analysis doesn't just look at whether the sperm are moving.
Right.
It looks at progressive motility.
Right. And the distinction between general motility and progressive motility is critical. General motility just means, well, the tail is moving. That's it.
Just twitching around.
Yeah, essentially twitching.
Yeah.
But progressive motility requires the sperm to swim forward in a straight line, or at least a large circle with forward momentum.
Got it. It actually has to go somewhere.
Exactly. And biologically, this requires a massive amount of cellular energy. The mid-piece of the sperm is packed with mitochondria.
Yeah, the powerhouse of the cell. I remember that from high school biology.
You got it. The powerhouse. They generate ATP to fuel that whipping motion of the tail. So if there's a defect in energy production, the sperm might twitch or swim in tight little circles, which means it will never navigate the female reproductive tract to reach the egg.
It's like the difference between running on a treadmill and running a marathon.
That is a great way to put it.
You can expend a ton of energy on a treadmill, but you aren't actually covering any ground. And, progressive motility is just one metric. The analysis also measures morphology, which evaluates the shape and structure.
Right. The physical build of it.
It's like, does the sperm have a normal oval head with an intact acrosome, which is the little cap containing the enzymes needed to penetrate the egg, right?
Yep. The acrosome is vital. If the shape is wrong, it can't penetrate.
And then there is concentration, which is the sheer volume of sperm per milliliter. But the sources list a myriad of complex causes for why these numbers might just crash. And the medical jargon is intense. You see terms like varicocele, hormonal imbalances, inflammation, or DNA fragmentation.
Let's break those down mechanistically.
Yeah.
Because they sound scary, but they make sense when you look at the biology. Take a varicocele, for instance. It's essentially a varicose vein, but inside the scrotum.
Oh, wow. Like the ones people get on their legs.
Exactly like that. And because the vein is enlarged, blood pools there instead of circulating efficiently. Now, testicles hang outside the body because sperm production requires an environment a few degrees cooler than core body temperature.
Oh, they need the AC on.
They do. So that pooled blood from a varicocele, it acts like a localized heating pad.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that excess heat physically disrupts the delicate process of spermatogenesis, leading to lower counts and much poorer motility.
That is fascinating. And then you have DNA fragmentation, which honestly sounds terrifying.
It does sound like a sci-fi concept.
It really does. But if we think about the sperm as a delivery vehicle, DNA fragmentation means the cargo itself is damaged. Like the DNA strands inside the sperm head actually have physical breaks in them.
Yes. Microscopic tears in the genetic code.
And a major driver of that is oxidative stress, which, we hear oxidative stress in skincare commercials all the time, But in reproductive biology, it means you have too many free radicals, unstable molecules bouncing around.
Right. They're bouncing around and literally stealing electrons from the sperm's cell membrane and its DNA,
Mm.
which causes serious structural damage.
And we have to remember that this complex male biology isn't operating in a vacuum, right?
No, not at all.
Because very often, a couple is simultaneously facing female factor infertility. We're talking about age-related factors, diminished ovarian reserve, embryo development issues, tubal blockages, or even recurrent miscarriage.
It completely shifts the landscape. When female factors co-occur, the treatment priorities have to change. The right plan absolutely has to consider both partners together. You cannot isolate the male reproductive system from the shared goal of achieving a healthy pregnancy.
Which brings up a critical realization about the semen analysis itself. A single test is just a snapshot.
That's all it is. A single moment in time.
Yeah, but human biology is a feature-length movie. A semen analysis is like hitting pause, printing out a single frame of that movie, and trying to judge the entire plot based on that one picture.
It's a brilliant analogy.
Because sperm are so sensitive to environmental factors, right? Like that varicocele heat we talked about, or even just a recent fever or a spike in stress hormones. The parameters can fluctuate wildly from month to month.
Oh, the variation between two samples from the exact same person can be staggering. I mean, repeat testing is absolutely essential before making any major medical decisions. You need multiple frames of the movie to understand the trajectory of the plot.
So you don't just panic at the first test.
Exactly. A comprehensive evaluation by a reproductive urologist clarifies whether there's a correctable structural issue like a varicocele that needs surgical repair, or whether we need to look at altering the systemic environment in which the sperm are being produced.
Okay, so if sperm production is this continuous, highly sensitive movie rather than a static state, how do we intervene to change the ending?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right, and this brings us to the biological mechanics of acupuncture, but I have to play the skeptic here for a minute.
Please do, I welcome it.
Wait, so sticking a needle into a specific point on the ankle or the lower back is actually going to improve testicular blood flow or reduce pelvic congestion. Honestly, it sounds like we're trying to fix a plumbing issue with a pushpin.
It's a completely fair reaction. It is a vital question, and answering it requires shifting away from the idea of mysticism and looking purely at neurobiology. Acupuncture is not a blanket treatment applied blindly.
Okay.
What's fascinating here is the well-documented connection between peripheral nerve stimulation and the autonomic nervous system. When a needle is inserted into specific myofascial trigger points, it stimulates sensory nerves that send signals directly to the brain, specifically the hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus, okay, which acts as the control center for the body's stress response and hormone production, right?
Exactly.
So if a patient is dealing with chronic stress, whether from the trauma of infertility itself, which is massive, or just modern life, their body is locked in a sympathetic nervous system state, the classic fight or flight mode.
Spot on. And in a state of fight or flight, the body prioritizes survival over everything else. It dumps cortisol and adrenaline into the bloodstream. And one of the immediate physiological effects of adrenaline is vasoconstriction, the narrowing of blood vessels. The body restricts blood flow to non-essential systems like digestion and reproduction and diverts it to the heart, lungs, and skeletal muscles.
Because it thinks you need to run from a tiger.
Exactly. Your body doesn't know you're just stressed about a fertility clinic visit. By stimulating specific neural pathways through acupuncture, we can downregulate that sympathetic response and activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Which is the rest and digest state.
Yes, the healing state.
Wow, okay. So by lowering cortisol and shutting off the fight or flight alarm, the nervous system signals the blood vessels to relax. You get vasodilation.
Exactly.
The vessels widen, which physically allows more oxygen-rich, nutrient-dense blood to flow back into the pelvic region and the testes. So you aren't just treating stress, you are reversing the vascular restriction caused by stress.
You're hitting the nail on the head. And we also use this exact mechanism to address pelvic congestion.
How does that work?
Well, pelvic congestion occurs when blood flow is sluggish, leading to pooling and inflammation in the pelvic floor. Stagnant blood lacks oxygen and carries a much higher concentration of metabolic waste and free radicals.
Which goes back to that oxidative stress damaging the DNA.
Yes, by promoting active, localized vasodilation, acupuncture helps flush out that stagnant blood and reduces the oxidative stress environment surrounding the reproductive organs.
You are fundamentally changing the environment of the factory.
That's a great way to think about it.
But optimizing a biological factory takes time. You can't just flip a switch and expect better products on the conveyor belt tomorrow. The source material points out a really rigid biological timeline. A full sperm development cycle. The process of spermatogenesis takes roughly 90 days.
Spermatogenesis is an incredibly intricate assembly line. It begins with germ cells in the testes multiplying and dividing. They gradually form the head, the midpiece, and the tail.
Right.
But once they are fully formed, they're still immotile. They can't swim yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They have to travel to the epididymis, which is a coiled tube at the back of the testicle, where they spend another couple of weeks maturing and acquiring the actual ability to swim. That entire journey, from a basic cell to an ejaculated motile sperm, is a 3-month endeavor.
So if a patient goes in for like one acupuncture session or takes a supplement for a week and expects their semen analysis to show massive improvements the next Tuesday, they are completely ignoring the physiological reality.
Entirely. The sperm they ejaculate today were built in the environment of 3 months ago.
That makes so much sense.
And this dictates the entire structure of complementary care.
Mm-hmm.
The protocol at specialized clinics like the Berkeley Center involves scheduling acupuncture treatments twice weekly over several months.
To match that timeline.
Right. The intervention must align with the biological reality. You have to sustain the improved blood flow, the reduced oxidative stress, and the down-regulated cortisol for the duration of a full 90-day cycle to ensure the next batch of sperm develops in an optimized environment.
Okay, but this introduces a massive tension into the process. If acupuncture requires a 90-day window to match the sperm cycle, how does that fit into a modern medical world?
It's a huge challenge.
Because couples facing infertility are often rushing toward incredibly time-sensitive treatments. The biological clock on the female side might be ticking loudly. How do you bridge the Eastern approach, which relies on a slow physiological rebuild, with the Western approach, which utilizes immediate interventions like IVF or IUI?
The guiding principle is integration, not substitution.
Right.
Acupuncture must never delay a needed reproductive urology consultation.
Right.
You should never delay an IVF retrieval cycle, an IUI, or any other time-sensitive Western intervention. It is an active complement to conventional medicine. If a couple is scheduled for an IVF cycle in 3 weeks, you do not cancel the cycle to wait for acupuncture to work.
You just work with the time you have.
Exactly. You use acupuncture in the weeks leading up to the procedure to optimize the immediate environment as much as possible, while fully recognizing the limitations of the timeline.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The sources also mention the addition of targeted Chinese herbal medicine and fertility nutrition, but there's a heavy caution flag raised about herbal medicine, specifically regarding how it interacts with Western treatment.
Oh, absolutely. Herbal medicine requires immense clinical precision. Herbs contain pharmacologically active compounds. They aren't just teas, they are medicine.
Right.
They are metabolized by the liver, often using the exact same enzymatic pathways that metabolize Western fertility drugs.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so if an acupuncturist prescribes a generic herbal formula without deeply understanding a patient's concurrent Western medical protocol, those herbs could actually accelerate the breakdown of synthetic hormones, rendering the Western drugs less effective.
Or they could alter hormonal baselines right before an endocrinologist runs crucial blood work, completely skewing the results.
Exactly. It has to be highly coordinated.
Sure.
The practitioner needs a full list of Western medications, planned surgical procedures, and laboratory findings.
It sounds like teamwork is essential.
It is. The objective is to support the body's natural reproductive function without ever crossing wires with the reproductive endocrinologist protocol. This level of integration is why seeing a specialist who deeply understands both paradigms is non-negotiable.
Okay, so let's apply this integration to a specific, highly advanced scenario. IVF combined with ICSI.
Okay, yeah.
For those unfamiliar, ICSI stands for intracytoplasmic sperm injection. It is an absolute marvel of modern laboratory science. The embryologist selects a single, live sperm, immobilizes it, and uses a microscopic needle to inject it directly into the center of the egg.
It really is a marvel. It bypasses almost every natural biological barrier to fertilization.
Right.
The sperm doesn't have to swim through the cervix, navigate the fallopian tubes, or secrete enzymes to break through the egg's outer shell. The embryologist handles all the mechanics.
So my immediate assumption as a layperson is this. If ICSI does all the heavy lifting, doesn't sperm motility stop mattering entirely?
That's what most people think.
Because if you're putting the sperm in a helicopter and dropping it directly onto the finish line, who cares if it has the cellular energy to run a marathon? Why spend 90 days doing acupuncture to improve motility if the embryologist is just going to inject the sperm anyway?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a much more intricate biological reality. It is incredibly tempting to view the sperm as nothing more than a delivery vehicle.
Sure.
ICSI absolutely solves the mechanical problem of fertilization. It gets the vehicle into the garage. However, male reproductive health dictates what happens after the vehicle arrives.
Okay, let's bring back that DNA fragmentation concept. Think of the sperm's DNA as a highly complex architectural blueprint for building the embryo.
Perfect analogy.
The sperm is tasked with carrying this blueprint across a battlefield full of oxidative stress and inflammation. If that blueprint gets riddled with holes from shrapnel along the way, it arrives damaged. So ICSI can guarantee that the delivery truck safely crosses the battlefield and gets the blueprint to the construction crew, the egg. But once the egg opens that blueprint, it finds missing pages and torn instructions.
And the construction crew cannot build a structurally sound house with a shattered blueprint. The overall health of the sperm, the integrity of its DNA, shaped by the environment it matured in, deeply influences ensuing embryo development.
It's not just about getting there.
Not at all. High DNA fragmentation, often a result of poor testicular environment, is strongly correlated with poor embryo cleavage rates, lower blastocyst formation, and a much higher risk of recurrent miscarriage, even when ICSI successfully achieves initial fertilization.
The mechanical delivery was successful, but the biological payload was compromised.
Exactly.
That completely reframes the conversation. ICSI bypasses the need for the sperm to swim, but it cannot bypass the biological quality of the cargo.
This is exactly why optimizing sperm parameters through targeted complementary care remains vital, even when utilizing the most advanced assisted reproductive technologies available. Improving testicular blood flow and reducing systemic oxidative stress through acupuncture isn't just about making the sperm swim faster. It is about protecting the structural integrity of the DNA blueprint they carry.
So what does this all mean for the listener? Given that acupuncture is this highly specialized complementary tool operating on a strict 90-day biological timeline to protect that blueprint, how should a couple actually measure its success?
It's a tough balance to strike.
Because when you're vulnerable, navigating the trauma of infertility, it is terribly easy to grasp at false hope.
This raises an important question about defining success and setting clinical expectations. A legitimate, integrative plan never begins with a practitioner guaranteeing a pregnancy.
It shouldn't, no.
It begins with a comprehensive, nuanced history. A proper specialist doesn't just look at today's low motility number. They review prior pregnancies, the timeline of trying to conceive, detailed results of DNA fragmentation testing, and the precise findings from the reproductive urologist's physical exam.
The sources actually outline specific ideal candidates for this approach. It's particularly relevant for men with mild to moderate abnormalities in motility, a borderline total motile count, or those dealing with unexplained subfertility.
Right, those cases where the Western diagnostics haven't found a glaring structural issue, but the system just isn't functioning optimally.
Exactly. It serves as a highly structured, non-surgical complement. For many couples facing agonizing waiting periods between failed cycles or before repeat testing, engaging in a physiologically grounded protocol provides a proactive way to optimize health.
It does. However, the true benchmark of this complementary care must remain objective and measurable.
Right. We aren't just looking for the patient to feel more relaxed, although down-regulating that sympathetic nervous system is a crucial part of the mechanism. We are looking for hard data.
Success means observable changes in repeat semen parameters after the 90-day cycle. It means achieving better morphology percentages, a higher total motile count, or a reduction in DNA fragmentation levels on a follow-up assay.
Tangible results.
Yes. It means moving the couple forward with a customized strategy that respects their biology rather than rushing them into a generic one-size-fits-all supplement protocol.
And for those of you listening who want to explore what this integrative, mechanism-based approach actually looks like in practice, you can dive deeper into these specific protocols at www.berkeleycenter.com or reach out directly by calling 212-685-0985.
I highly encourage it.
Having a transparent conversation with a specialist who fluently speaks both the Eastern language of systemic regulation and the Western language of reproductive endocrinology, it's a powerful step toward regaining agency.
Regaining a sense of control in a situation that feels inherently chaotic is paramount. You are shifting from being a passive recipient of a static clinical printout to an active participant in altering the underlying physiological environment.
It really is a paradigm shift. Today, we've traveled from the clinical shock of a semen analysis to the microscopic reality of cellular energy and DNA integrity. We unpacked how progressive motility and total counts aren't absolute endpoints, but rather single frames in a complex 90-day biological movie.
A movie you can help direct.
Yes. We explored the neurobiological mechanics of how targeted acupuncture can stimulate the nervous system, downregulate cortisol, and drive vital blood flow back to the reproductive organs. And most importantly, we mapped out how these Eastern practices don't compete with Western medicine. They work alongside marvels like ICSI and IVF to protect the very blueprint of future life.
As we conclude, I want to leave you with a final thought that builds on our exploration of ICSI. We discussed how modern science can now manually bypass motility. We can use a microscopic needle to bypass the sperm's evolutionary mandate to swim. Yet despite this mechanical victory, the underlying health of that sperm continues to dictate the viability of the embryo and the success of the pregnancy. To me, this demands that we fundamentally rethink our cultural and medical definition of male fertility.
It goes far beyond the traditional metrics of virility or, the sheer volume of swimmers.
Male fertility can no longer be defined simply by the mechanical act of reaching the egg. The race is no longer the sole arbiter of success.
Wow.
We must view male fertility as the careful biological curation of an invisible payload, the precise packaging of intact DNA and cellular signals that the sperm carries into a future child's very first cells. The internal environment that constructs and protects that payload matters deeply long after the swimming is done.
That reframes the entire journey. It's not just a spreadsheet of clinical terms or a judgment on your biology. The next time you are handed that piece of paper, remember that it is merely one frame of a long, highly adaptable movie. You have the tools, the science, and the power to help direct the rest of the plot. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep investigating the mechanisms behind the medicine, and always keep seeking the bigger picture. We'll catch you next time.